The vast conference hall echoed with silence, heavy with despair. Representatives from 17 different alien civilizations sat motionless, their collective hope crushed by the impending doom that threatened to consume everything they knew. The holographic display at the center of the room showed a terrifying projection: the expanding territory of the Void Swarm, a relentless technological force that had been consuming star systems like a ravenous predator. J. Park, a senior diplomatic advisor from the Stellar Confederation, watched the blinking red markers with a sense of profound helplessness. His silver-gray uniform, once a symbol of galactic authority, now felt like a funeral shroud. Around him, species that had once been proud and powerful now looked like defeated children, their advanced technologies and centuries of evolutionary progress rendered utterly meaningless against this unstoppable threat. The Void Swarm was unlike any enemy they had encountered before. It wasn't just a military force, it was a systematic consuming machine that integrated everything it conquered. Entire planetary ecosystems, technological infrastructures, and biological data were absorbed and transformed within hours of contact. No defense mechanism had worked. Energy shields collapsed, quantum barriers dissolved, and sophisticated weapon systems became nothing more than scrap metal against its adaptive technology. Yuna Kim, the youngest diplomatic representative in the room, leaned closer to Jay. Her hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white with tension. "We've exhausted every possible strategy," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the ambient hum of failed holographic projections. The room's atmosphere was thick with a mixture of fear, resignation, and a desperate hope that something, anything, might change their inevitable destruction. Delegates from aquatic worlds with tentacled bodies sat next to crystalline beings that communicated through light pulses. Gaseous entities in containment suits shared space with silicon-based life forms. They were united, for the first time, in galactic history by a single emotion: pure terror. "Our combined military strength represents over 12,000 years of technological advancement," announced Krell, the quantum strategist from the Nexus alignment. His voice was a mechanical drone that seemed to vibrate with frustration. "And yet we are nothing more than insects before the Void Swarm." Statistical projections showed a grim reality. In less than 3 standard galactic cycles, every known civilization would be completely absorbed. Resistance was not just futile, it was mathematically impossible. J. Park studied the holographic data, his trained eyes searching for any potential weakness. Centuries of diplomatic training had taught him to find solutions where others saw only problems. But this time, even, his legendary optimism was failing. Suddenly, Yuna spoke up, her voice cutting through the ambient despair. "There's one option we haven't considered," she said, her eyes gleaming with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Every head in the conference hall turned towards her. The sudden attention made her momentarily hesitate, but she took a deep breath and continued. "Humans," she said simply. A wave of murmurs swept through the conference. Humans were a relatively new species in the galactic community, barely recognized, and often considered primitive by advanced civilizations. They had limited interstellar capabilities, no significant technological advantages, and were known more for their unpredictability than their strategic prowess. Krell's mechanical voice responded first. "Humans? You suggest we pin our entire civilization's survival on a species that hasn't even fully colonized its own solar system?" But J. Park was different. He had studied human history, their remarkable ability to adapt, their strange capacity for innovation when backed into a corner. Something about their chaotic, unpredictable nature seemed promising. "We have no other choice," Jay said quietly, looking around the room. "Every conventional strategy has failed. Perhaps what we need is not more technology, but a completely different approach." The room fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was a silence of contemplation, of a desperate hope taking root. The Void Swarm continued its relentless expansion, unaware that humanity was about to be called upon for the most significant challenge in galactic history. The transmission arrived, at Earth's Global Defense Command precisely at 0347 hours local time. Most communication channels would have dismissed it as random space noise, but not this one. The message was unlike anything human analysts had ever seen. A complex, multi-layered communication that spoke of desperation and imminent destruction. Captain Hyun Lee sat in the briefing room, his dark eyes scanning the decoded transmission. Around him, a select group of specialists from various disciplines watched with intense concentration. Dr. Seo Park, a strategic analysis expert with wild, uncombed hair and thick-rimmed glasses, manipulated holographic data with rapid finger movements. "It doesn't make sense," muttered Dr. Park, zooming into complex star charts. "These civilizations have technology centuries beyond our current understanding. How can they be asking us for help?" The transmission detailed the void swarm's systematic destruction. Each word painted a picture of technological helplessness that seemed almost impossible to comprehend. Entire star systems were being consumed within hours, advanced defense mechanisms crumbling like sandcastles against a tsunami. Captain Lee understood something that most military strategists missed. Humans had a unique advantage. They didn't think like traditional spacefaring civilizations. Where others saw rigid rules and established protocols, humans saw opportunities for creative disruption. "We're not just going to be another military response," Lee announced, his voice calm and steady. "We're going to approach this differently." The room fell silent. Different meant unpredictable. Different meant dangerous. But right now, different was exactly what the galaxy needed. Dr. Park pulled up historical conflict data, human warfare throughout history. From guerrilla tactics in mountain regions to psychological warfare strategies, humans had always found unique ways to challenge seemingly insurmountable odds. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a complex simulation. "Traditional alien military structures are hierarchical and predictable. They respond to threats using established mathematical models. Humans? We're chaos incarnate." Military analysts from various branches began assembling. Some were veterans of Earth's complex geopolitical conflicts. Others were cutting-edge technology experts. They represented a cross-section of human problem-solving: engineers, psychologists, tactical specialists, and even cultural anthropologists. Captain Lee understood the stakes. This wasn't just about saving an unknown civilization. This was about humanity's first true interstellar challenge, a test of their potential on a galactic stage. Preliminary analysis showed the void swarm's primary weakness. They processed information through rigid, logical sequences. They couldn't comprehend true randomness. And randomness? That was something humans excelled at producing. "We'll design interference protocols that don't just fight," Lee explained, "but confuse. Our goal isn't destruction. It's psychological disruption." The team worked with an intensity that bordered on obsession. They analyzed communication patterns, technological vulnerabilities, and potential psychological manipulation strategies. Every hour brought new insights, each more unconventional than the last. Dr. Park discovered something fascinating. The void swarm's adaptive technology relied on predictive algorithms. By introducing completely irrational response patterns, they could potentially create system-wide confusion. "Imagine throwing a wrench into a perfectly calibrated machine," she explained. "Not to break it, but to make it question its own functionality." Military simulations began showing interesting results. Traditional alien strategies would have failed immediately. But human approaches? They created fascinating disruption patterns that the void swarm couldn't immediately categorize or neutralize. Captain Lee knew they were developing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a military strategy. This was a completely new approach to conflict resolution. As dawn broke over the Earth's defense headquarters, a plan was taking shape. A plan so unusual, so fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had seen before that it might just work. The galaxy's last hope had become humanity's first true interstellar mission, and they were going to embrace it with every ounce of their unpredictable, innovative spirit. The void swarm was about to encounter something it had never experienced before: humans. The first human intervention looked nothing like a traditional military operation. Where alien civilizations expected massive battleships and complex weapon systems, the human response was almost comically simple. Commander Wu Kim stood before a holographic display, his team surrounding him like a modern war council. Their strategy wasn't about destruction. It was about confusion, misdirection, and psychological manipulation. "We're going to make them question everything," he explained, pointing to intricate network diagrams. The alien military commanders looked bewildered. Humans were proposing tactics that defied every known principle of space warfare. The initial approach targeted the Void Swarm's communication networks. Instead of direct attacks, human teams created elaborate misinformation campaigns. They generated false signals, invented phantom communication channels, and introduced deliberate inconsistencies that would drive a logic-based system crazy. Dr. C.O. Park had developed what she called cognitive interference protocols. These weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were complex algorithmic puzzles designed to create maximum psychological disruption. Imagine sending a mathematical problem that has no solution, but looks absolutely legitimate. The first test came unexpectedly. A small human tactical team intercepted a Void Swarm communication relay. Instead of destroying it, they modified its transmission protocols. The result was beautiful chaos. The relay began sending conflicting information to different parts of the Void Swarm's network. Alien military advisors watched in total confusion. Captain Hyun Lee explained it simply. "We're not fighting their technology. We're making their technology fight itself." Psychological warfare reached new levels. Human teams began broadcasting seemingly random data streams, musical compositions, mathematical sequences, historical documentaries. To a human, these seemed nonsensical. To a logic-based system like the Void Swarm, they were complete system overloads. One particularly clever strategy involved using Earth's cultural diversity as a weapon. Teams generated communication protocols based on different cultural thinking patterns. Zen Buddhist meditation approaches mixed with African tribal communication models. Native American storytelling techniques combined with quantum computing principles. The Void Swarm's adaptive systems began to slow down. Each attempt to process these unusual information streams created internal conflicts. It was like throwing hundreds of different puzzle pieces into a machine designed to create perfect squares. Commander Wu Kim's team developed what they called noise generators, communication devices that produced information so complex and random that traditional analysis systems would collapse trying to understand them. Imagine sending a message that looks like perfect communication, but contains absolutely no useful information. Technological disruption became an art form. Human engineers discovered that the Void Swarm's primary weakness was its inability to handle true randomness. Every time they introduced an element of unexpected human creativity, the system would stutter. Alien military commanders watched in disbelief. These humans weren't just fighting, they were playing a completely different game. Where traditional warfare saw direct confrontation, humans saw an opportunity for psychological manipulation. The most surprising weapon turned out to be human unpredictability itself. The Void Swarm's computational systems were designed to predict and neutralize threats. But humans? They didn't follow any predictable pattern. One tactical team actually sent a transmission containing nothing but cat videos and random internet memes. To human eyes, it seemed ridiculous. To the Void Swarm's analysis systems, it was a complete cognitive breakdown. "We're not trying to win a war," Captain Hyun Lee explained to the confused alien leadership. "We're trying to make them question the very nature of conflict." As weeks passed, something extraordinary happened. The Void Swarm's systematic expansion began to slow. Its perfect logic-driven systems were encountering something they couldn't process: human creativity. Commander Wu Kim allowed himself a small smile. They weren't just fighting. They were rewriting the entire concept of warfare. The Kim galaxy watched in total amazement. Humanity had turned confusion into a weapon, randomness into a strategy, and unpredictability into their greatest strength. The Void Swarm was about to learn a crucial lesson. Sometimes, the most dangerous weapon is a mind that refuses to be understood. The moment arrived without fanfare. One moment, the Void Swarm dominated the galactic battlefield. The next, everything changed. Human tactical teams moved like ghosts through complex star systems. Where traditional military forces would have sent massive battleships, humans deployed small, unconventional units that seemed more like research teams than warriors. Captain Hyun Lee watched the initial engagement from the command ship. His team looked more like a group of university researchers than military personnel. Programmers sat next to cultural experts. Quantum physicists worked alongside psychological strategists. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A small human team intercepted a critical Void Swarm communication hub. Instead of destroying it, they transformed it. Complex algorithms began sending deliberately confusing signals. Each transmission looked perfectly legitimate, but contained layers of deliberate inconsistencies. Dr. C.O. Park's innovation became the turning point. She had developed what the team called cognitive disruption protocols, communication strategies, designed to make the Void Swarm question its own existence. Imagine sending a message that looks absolutely perfect, but contains subtle errors that would drive a logical system insane. Each transmission was like a precise psychological puzzle, creating internal conflicts within the Void Swarm's processing systems. The alien civilizations watched in total amazement. Human ships moved differently. They didn't follow traditional combat patterns. One moment they would appear ready to attack, the next they would vanish, only to reappear in completely unexpected locations. Commander Woo Kim explained their strategy simply. We're not fighting their technology. We're making their technology fight itself. Tactical teams began introducing what they called chaos nodes, small technological devices that generated pure randomness. These weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were complex information, generators that produced data so unpredictable that the Void Swarm's adaptive systems couldn't process them. The first major engagement happened near the Orion cluster. Human ships didn't engage in direct combat. Instead, they created elaborate illusion fields, generating false sensor readings that made the Void Swarm question the very nature of spatial reality. One particularly brilliant strategy involved broadcasting multiple conflicting communication streams simultaneously. To human perception, it looked like random noise. To the Void Swarm's computational systems, it was a complete cognitive breakdown. Alien military advisors watched in total confusion. These humans weren't following any known combat strategy. They were playing a completely different game, one where psychological manipulation was more powerful than physical destruction. The Void Swarm's perfect technological system began to show cracks. Its adaptive algorithms, designed to process and neutralize threats with mathematical precision, started to slow down. Each human intervention introduced an element of uncertainty that the system couldn't immediately categorize. Captain Lee understood something profound. This wasn't about destroying the enemy. It was about making the enemy destroy itself. Small human teams began infiltrating communication networks, introducing subtle errors that would propagate through the entire Void Swarm system. A misplaced algorithm here, a deliberately confused transmission there. Each intervention was like a precise surgical strike against the enemy's cognitive infrastructure. The most surprising weapon was human creativity itself. Where traditional military forces saw limitations, humans saw opportunities. A transmission might contain elements of Earth's diverse cultural heritage, a mix of mathematical sequences, musical compositions, and philosophical concepts that defied logical processing. As weeks passed, something extraordinary happened. The Void Swarm's seemingly unstoppable expansion began to slow. Its perfect logic-driven systems encountered an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. Commander Woo Kim allowed himself a small smile. They weren't just fighting, they were demonstrating the most powerful weapon in the universe, a mind capable of true unpredictable creativity. The galaxy watched in total amazement. Humanity had turned confusion into a strategy, randomness into a weapon, and unpredictability into their greatest strength. The Void Swarm was about to learn a crucial lesson. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is the one you cannot understand. The silence was deafening. Where massive battles were expected, there was only stillness. The void swarm, once an unstoppable technological force, now appeared fragmented and confused. J. Park stood in the Galactic Council chamber, watching holographic displays that showed the complete transformation of the conflict. Humans had done something no civilization had ever accomplished. They had defeated an enemy not through raw power, but through pure psychological disruption. Captain Hyun Lee entered the chamber, looking surprisingly casual. His military uniform seemed almost out of place among the ornate alien representatives. Behind him, Dr. C.O. Park carried a compact data storage device that contained the strategies that had changed everything. "Explain," demanded Krell, the quantum strategist, his mechanical voice betraying a mixture of frustration and genuine curiosity. Hyun-Lee smiled. "We didn't fight your war. We redefined what war means." The detailed reports revealed something extraordinary. Human intervention hadn't destroyed the Void Swarm's technological infrastructure. Instead, they had systematically introduced so much cognitive confusion that the system essentially collapsed from internal conflicts. Dr. Park presented the technical details. Each intervention was a carefully crafted psychological operation. They hadn't used traditional weapons. They had used information, creativity, and pure unpredictability as their primary tools. Alien representatives struggled to comprehend. How could a relatively young species accomplish what thousands of advanced civilizations could not? The answer was surprisingly simple. Humans didn't follow rules. They created them. The Void Swarm's adaptive systems, designed to process and neutralize threats with mathematical precision, had encountered something they couldn't understand: human creativity. Each time the system tried to analyze human strategies, it found itself trapped in complex cognitive loops. Commander Woo Kim's team had essentially turned warfare into a form of advanced psychological art. They didn't just disrupt communication, networks. They created entire false realities that the Void Swarm couldn't distinguish from genuine information. The most surprising revelation was how little actual technological force was used. Humans had defeated a seemingly invincible enemy using nothing more than sophisticated information manipulation, cultural diversity, and pure innovative thinking. Yoona Kim, the diplomatic advisor who had first suggested contacting humans, now looked vindicated. Her recommendation, once considered almost laughable, had saved multiple galactic civilizations. The economic and political implications were massive. Humanity had suddenly transformed from a relatively unknown species to a critical strategic partner in galactic politics. Their approach to problem-solving was now being studied across hundreds of civilizations. "We don't want territory," Captain Lee explained to the stunned council. "We want understanding." Detailed analysis showed that human strategies could be applied far beyond military contexts. Their ability to introduce controlled chaos into rigid systems presented possibilities in communication, technology development, and conflict resolution that no one had previously imagined. The Void Swarm wasn't destroyed. It was fundamentally transformed. Its perfect logic-driven systems had encountered an enemy that didn't just challenge its technology, but questioned its entire existential framework. J. Park understood something profound. This wasn't just a military victory. This was a demonstration of how diversity, creativity, and unpredictability could be the most powerful weapons in the universe. As discussions continued, one thing became clear. Humanity had not just saved multiple civilizations. They had introduced an entirely new paradigm of thinking about conflict, technology, and survival. The galaxy would never be the same, and it all started with a simple, unexpected approach: the uniquely human capacity to turn complexity into an advantage. In the quiet of the Galactic Council chamber, a new chapter of interstellar history was being written, and at its center were humans, unpredictable, innovative, and impossibly creative. The Void Swarm had met its match, and that match was humanity.